The following program is made possible in part by the Dayton Bar Association.
Good evening and welcome to You and the Law. My name is Jeff Swillinger. I'm your host, and we have an exciting program this evening. Just a few ground rules. If you're watching us, you know that this is a program that is presented to you by Dayton Access Television and underwritten by the Dayton Bar Association. Throughout the show, there will be phone numbers that appear on the screen. If you look at the screen now, you'll see the phone number for DATV. There will probably be at different times pop up for the Dayton Bar Association and possibly the Dayton Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service. The number at the Dayton Bar Association is 222-7902. And again, the Dayton Bar underwrites this program. This is the October 19th edition of You and the Law, and I mentioned that our special guest tonight is here. She's here from Columbus. Her name is Susan Che, and she is the Executive Director of Ohio Legal Help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect.
And Ohio Legal Help is a very important name for you to remember, as she'll explain. It's also going to be, very important for you to get the website down correctly. It will be appearing on your screen. And as you see on the screen now, we'll be talking about what Ohio Legal Help is, how to use it, and much, much more. So with that in mind, Susan, again, good evening and welcome.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate you being here. So let's get started.
Okay.
What is Ohio Legal Help?
Sure. Well, I get that question a lot.
Okay.
So Ohio Legal Help, first of all, it's a trusted, vetted legal website, and we provide legal information on common everyday problems, like if you have a landlord-tenant issue, debt collection issue, bankruptcy is one issue that's been popular for us in terms of people coming to the site. But right now, our most popular issue is family law. So when we built the site, we kind of knew that. So we built a lot of content around family law, such as divorce, dissolution, legal separation, and then we also provide the forms so that if you want to do this on your own, although we always recommend that you get an attorney, such as from the Dayton Bar Lawyer Referral, that we provide the forms, and then we do something unique. We provide a guided interview. So if you actually take one of our forms, we're actually going to guide you through that. So for instance, right now we have divorce without kids. So for instance, if you're getting a divorce and you do not have children, that's a full interview that's available on our website right now.
So the focus, at least in part, relative to what you just mentioned, is on the pro se litigant, and I know you'll explain what that means. And let's back up just a moment and talk about how this came about, because I think that leads into this idea of pro se litigants and people representing themselves, and why this is such a valuable resource for individuals in these areas of the law.
Yep.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how Ohio Legal Help came about?
Sure. So in 2015, Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor put together the Access to Justice Task Force, really of a bunch of leaders throughout the state. And they came from all different backgrounds. You know, you had lawyers, you had judges, you had social service agencies. Folks came together in legal aid, and they looked at how they could address something called the justice gap. So Ohio has a population of about 11 million people. About 2 million people qualify for legal aid services. And obviously, the legal aids, while they are amazing organizations, can't serve all 2 million people. So folks knew that for every 1 or 2 folks served, they're going to turn away 2 or 3. And we wanted to create a trusted resource for those individuals. So the recommendation was that a legal information website that is free and not means tested, which means free essentially, for all, be created. And so from that task force, a steering committee was put together, and in 2017, that steering committee, until about actually August 27th when we launched, steered
Of this year.
of this year, that's right, steered the implementation and the build, because it's like building a building, of the ohiolegalhelp.org website. And so that's how it all came about. It came out of really great need in terms of those folks that, unfortunately, just because of resources, can't all be assisted by wonderful pro bono attorneys or the legal aid organizations.
Okay, and you talked about it being vetted. That gets back to talking about these different organizations that were part of the creation here,
Right.
part of the building blocks for the website.
Right.
And it was vetted as it was put together, and it is now and
Yep.
will continue to be.
That's correct.
While at the same time, these legal organizations across the state, locally, Legal Aid of Western Ohio, and
Yep.
Advocates for Basic Legal Equality, I want to make sure I mention those wonderful organizations here in the Dayton area. They have a lot of work to do, and they can't always represent everyone.
That's correct.
So an organization like this, through assisting people who may then represent themselves pro bono, or pro se, excuse me, will be assisted in part by this site, as you'll go on to explain
Yep, yep.
Later this evening.
Yep.
Okay, very good. So that's a little bit about the history. It kind of hit the streets roughly in August of
That's
this
correct.
year.
August 27th. Yep.
Okay. Now, how do people find Ohio Legal Help?
So we're really trying to get the word out, and that's why I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you again for
No,
being here.
seriously. We've been in, for instance, the Columbus Dispatch, Dayton Daily News ran a story which got picked up because of the circulation. And so we've been in a lot of both print and online publications. We've done a lot of social media, but it really is, you got to just be out there talking about it so folks can find you. And we've had actually pretty good so far, considering we've been alive since about August 27th. We've had almost 10,000 unique visitors already come to the site, and they stay on the site for a decent bit. And we've had so when someone comes to the site, the self-helpers that come to our site, they're going to look at different pages and try to figure out what they need. And they usually stay and look at about 6 or 7 pages. So of the almost 10,000 folks we've had over 80,000 page views.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot
And
of
we've
people
been-
in a short period
In
of
a
time.
short period of time. But we wanted to really grow that because we think that the way that we've approached it for self-helpers. We want to make sure that it's plain language, understandable, and easy to use.
Because again, and I'm going to keep saying this over and over again, the emphasis has been to help those folks who are not otherwise being helped for any myriad of reasons.
That's correct.
Most of which is just that the services that are in place can only do so much.
Right.
So this is an opportunity, and this
Yep.
is part of a national trend, isn't it?
It is.
About this idea of more pro se litigants handling their own affairs by definition
Right.
in the court system. Is that right?
There is a national trend, so we know that there's a vast majority of folks, either because of means or otherwise, aren't represented. And we want to make sure that they get the best information that they can. But Ohio Legal Help also does refer folks to, for instance, Dayton Bar Lawyer Referral. So I actually have a sense of the folks in income that come to the site. So we know that the majority of folks right now that are coming to the site are probably legal aid eligible, but we have a good swath, 30% or so, who aren't necessary, 30-40% actually right now, who aren't legal aid eligible. And those folks, we're actually referring them to bar associations because we believe that we also act as a connector. So we want to make sure that where folks are seeking an attorney, we get them to their trusted lawyer referral that is often from bar association.
And once again, they see the number on the screen, the Dayton Bar Association, 937-222-7902, and you can ask the individual who answers the phone there for the lawyer's referral service, and they'll get you to that person shortly after your call is made. Okay, let's talk about, we know a little bit about how we got here and what the purpose is, what the mission is.
Yep.
Let's repeat over and over again the website.
Sure.
Because, as I told you before the show started, I went online and I saw that there are a number of somewhat like-sounding websites
Sure.
here
Right.
that are, that appear at least to be set up by those in the for-profit area,
Right.
as opposed to what this initiative is all about, which
Yep.
is nonprofits
correct.
helping people who generally cannot afford legal services,
Right.
or in some cases, as you already
Can,
mentioned.
and we want to connect them
can,
to the
and you
to a
want-
vetted resource. That's right.
Exactly. So why don't we repeat the website, go ahead,
Sure.
and also talk about this just briefly, what people should look for when they go online.
Sure. So our website again is www.ohiolegalhelp. So that's all one word, .org. So if someone just essentially goes ohiolegalhelp.org, they will get to our website. And I really just encourage folks to explore, because we also built the website not only for self-helpers, we built it for family and friends who are sometimes helping folks as well. So we want to make sure that folks can find it, because you might be helping a senior, you might be helping your daughter, and we want to make sure that folks can find the site.
In addition to what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
would there be any keyword or key drop-down, something you'd suggest maybe people go to the mission statement, something that they would know pretty quickly if they had any doubt if they were in the right place?
So actually what we can do is, I gave Eric our logo.
Okay.
So you would see it right away. So for instance, Eric, if you want to bring up our logo, you'll see that. So on all of our pages, you'll see a very defined brand.
Here we
We're very simple, and you'll see it on every page. And you'll also see that red, there it is, wonderful. And then do you see the red button with Ohio with the star? You'll see that brand on almost every page, and so you will know that that is essentially the right website.
Okay.
In addition to it, our website has a very simple, clean feel. So Eric, if you want to go to it, right. So we did this intentionally based upon actually what consumers said. So we talked to, via a survey, thank goodness, and then we talked to people in person as well, about 800 Ohioans, and they actually gave us information on how they wanted the site to appear. So what you'll find here is a site that's very clean. It's super simple. We don't have advertising on the site because we want this to be a vetted, again, trusted resource. And you'll see very simple, clean icons. We don't actually have pictures on the site. And the reason for that is we wanted this to be as simple of a download as possible. So for instance, and you'll notice that all these pictures are for your phone. So this is the first mobile, truly mobile first website of its kind that's done by a nonprofit. And so what Eric is taking you through is actually what we call our guided experience, because you actually, a lot of consumers said they don't actually know what their legal help is. And so we ask simple questions. Our guide stone is that essentially you don't normally get more than 5 choices, because what we learned is that folks get overloaded if you ask them too many, or they see too many things on a drop down. And then I set this up, and this is actually a true experience. I took all these images off my phone, and so I set it up for Montgomery and Dayton, and then, yep. And so here you had a Ohio individual who's trying to get help to get some repairs done to their apartment. So it's a common problem. And here we're going to ask you a few more questions. If you hit yes, consumers said they wanted choices. And so in this individual, the consumer said, I'm going to give you a little bit more information so that you can give me the right resources. And so, and you don't have to tell me your true income. I just need a resource. I need your true income, but I do it in a range, because again, folks, we don't want to grab too much data from you, right? This is all anonymous, by the way. I don't ask for your name at this point. And then you get to this page.
Can we go back one,
Yeah,
Eric? Yeah.
yeah. And so, right.
Okay.
So this individual, I set it up so that they were a senior, so 60 or older. They're not an agricultural worker because, and that's for lawyers, that's a term of art. And what if they were to select yes, we would actually send them to ABLE because they work with agricultural workers throughout the state.
Again, locally, that's Advocates for Basic Legal Equality.
Exactly.
Here in Dayton.
Right. And then we ask if someone's homeless or at risk of becoming homeless because we're going to connect them to 211. Because we work with United Way of Ohio, actually, and then...
Why don't you tell people what 211 is?
Sure. So United Way, often at your local level, will set up something called a 211 number, which connects you, and it's actually the best way into the shelter system, because at least when I used to work, because I actually worked at ABLE, as I told you, and I served on something called the Continuum of Care. And so some time ago, they set it up so that you actually got shelter services through a central line, which now is often 211 in your community. But anyways, once you give that information, which by the way is all optional. So for instance, you could have gotten to this page without giving me that information.
That's important.
Right.
Oftentimes, when you have to move through a series of prompts, you can't get to where you want
You can
unless you've
skip
answered
all of those.
everything. You
Yep.
can skip those and move to
That's
this.
correct.
Very important.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, simple, clean. And we did this, again, no heavy graphics or photos. And then here are the basics. If Eric, you'll stop for a second. We have understanding the basics. And again, this is on phone, and we user tested with all low-income folks throughout the state. We had an unusually high success rate, as in they were all successful in navigating. And so these are called essentially the understanding the basics, which basically tells you enough so you can take action if you're a self-helper. And then legal help and lawyers, because we want to, again, connect folks to their local organizations. We also give forms and letters. Now, my phone, I couldn't take the entire picture, but below that would have been courts as well, because we're going to connect you to your local court and to your local 211, which right now you can't see. I've opened up a little bit of the understanding basics and taken a photo off my phone. And essentially, we tell folks just the information they need to take action. Consumers said to us, don't give me too much. And we allowed free form answers in the survey. So people don't like attorneys, but we knew that. But they also said really disheartening things like that the legal system was so confusing that it caused debilitating anxiety. So that's not something I wanted to hear as an attorney, and so we knew we had a challenge. They also said things like no legal mumble jumble. So we actually try to be as good about that as possible, but sometimes we have to use the legal words. When we do, and you can't see it on this demonstration, you'll see a highlighted term, and if you essentially just click on it, it's not a pop-up, but within your phone screen, we don't take you to a different page. It gives you an embedded glossary. So it will tell you what that legal term means, but in plain language.
So again, for folks who may not understand that term, embedded glossary, on the website, it will explain a term that is relevant to your search.
Right, but it'll be on your current phone screen,
Okay.
so that you never have to navigate away. Because what we learned was that if you make folks navigate away, you lose them.
Okay.
So I've actually done Legal Aid of Western Ohio, which is a wonderful legal aid that serves in this region. You'll also see the top of Advocates for Basic Legal Equality. They handle slightly different cases. That's why they're both here.
Right.
Now, this is something, though, that Legal Aid of Western Ohio could potentially provide you information or advice on.
If someone called about this type of housing
That's correct.
issue, if you've been following the prompts here, then you would see that that's what Susan is talking
Right.
about as to what
Right.
legal aid might handle, or in a different fact pattern, possibly able.
Right.
Yes.
So they would click through, and then once they click through, they would take them to, this is what we call a resource page. And so it's Legal Aid of Western Ohio, and then Eric, if you go to the next one, it's like you're scrolling. We give them how to request services, and then this is also important. We know folks don't often have the time to look at this right now, or they might not have the time to call or do the online intake just at this moment. So you can actually text the link to yourself, you can email the link, or you can copy the link. And then we did the print button actually to do something really simple on the printing, so that we actually partnered with the libraries, the public libraries. So there's 600 plus public libraries in the state. We work with them, and they are both promoting this site, but they're also acting as navigators for us. So they can't provide legal advice, but they can help someone navigate the site. And so we've done a lot of trainings for librarians who are fabulous as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, and so you'll see, typical things that you would see, Google Maps, so that you can figure out where it is, you can get directions. You're on your phone, so when you click on a telephone number, it will essentially dial and you'll see it come up on your phone. But you can also complete that online intake, you'll see right there. You can actually complete that on your phone because that online intake was created actually through the Justice Foundation. The Ohio Access to Justice Foundation actually helped LAW and ABLE create a mobile-first online intake as well. So we know that you can actually do that on your phone.
It's particularly helpful for people who don't have access to a laptop or
We-
a desktop,
we
that
built-
type of thing.
We built it with them in mind, and actually the mobile-first design comes from Southeast Ohio. We worked with a lot of folks and providers in Appalachia and rural, and they said our constituents don't have broadband in their homes, they don't have a computer, their lifeline is through their phone, but they also said don't gobble up their data. That's something that's important to them, and so that's why we did something really simple. This is really easy to navigate, and you don't have to gobble up a lot of data to do it. And so Eric, do you want to? And I showed that last one. If you go back, we have forms and letters as well. So, and then Eric, so they would have clicked through. That's fine. Here we go. Then you get into a landlord letter make repairs. And essentially, and there, Eric, do you want to go to the next one? And then you can actually fill this online using your phone. For instance, you can use your phone actually. Go ahead.
Now, I think we should make it clear too that you were taking screenshots
Yes,
from your phone, so
Yep.
people will be able to scroll up and down
absolutely.
and see what they can't see on this
Yep.
here.
So then they would have clicked on fill it online. We always ask to make sure that the form is right for them, that you did in fact live in a rental home. We asked if you paid all the rent, because to do rent escrow, you actually have to be current in rent. So there's some things that we're going to ask, so that basically if you answer these questions in a way that we don't think the letter may be right, we can't give legal advice, but we can say, you know what, this is what the law says. Are you sure this is the right form for you? Go ahead. And then you get a really simple form interface. Go ahead. And this is one of our simplest letters. It's about 5 or 6 questions. And then go ahead. So I'm actually going to fast forward. You get to the end. You've answered all your questions. And then you can download your document, which isn't something we normally recommend because you're on your phone. We actually say email it to yourself because then you'll always have a copy. Okay, so go ahead to the next. And, oops, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask a question. Maybe it's premature.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the possible discrepancy between the state law that these forms might follow, the advice might follow, and how each of the 88 counties may have local rules and procedures
Right.
that may cause some variation in what we're talking about this evening,
Right.
and how you dealt with that issue, or at least would you explain that? If you
Sure.
can't- Now, that can wait if you'd prefer to
No.
finish this.
This is actually, so this one is actually the letter that you start with to start the rent escrow process. And so that's based upon state law.
Right.
And so there's one law on this. Now, when you get to the forms, each court may have small variations. But if you notice, and you actually did this on my phone, and I'm giving you a screenshot of the PDF that was created by my phone. But I essentially did something really simple, which is I said have a broken refrigerator, broken stove, and then basically you need this letter in order to start the rent escrow process. And then what we would do then is they can come back. We tell them kind of here are your next steps. You have to send this letter. You have to wait about 30 days. It depends on the issue, right? Because if your heat's not working, that's not a 30-day issue. But this is a broken refrigerator, for instance. So Ohio law generally says about 30 days. And again, we don't give legal advice, but we help folks make some decisions. So we give people information so that they can make their own decisions, but we can't give legal advice via the website.
And again, as you said earlier, this is not a substitute for the advice an attorney may give you.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And this may give you a general overview of your situation.
Right.
It may give you some talking points. It may give you, up to this point
Like
of
a
the
simple
letter.
letter. Yep.
And you may decide that this is more than you can handle. The question then is, can you afford to set up an interview with an attorney?
Yep.
That's where going to Bar Association Lawyer Referral
That's correct.
Services,
Right.
which often will give you an opportunity to speak with an attorney at a reduced fee and
Yep.
for a short period of time to see whether you can work with that attorney
That's
or
correct.
some other attorney to get your problem solved.
That's correct.
Or if it's a type of thing where you feel confident in doing it yourself because you have the ability to use these forms and understand them.
That's correct.
At the same time, and I'm just trying to summarize here, but up to this point, at the same time, you would recommend that folks check and be prepared if they can't check ahead of time before they take any of these steps. Be prepared for hearing that, well, your forms may not be precise in that particular county.
We always tell folks that there could be slight variations.
Okay.
Right. So this landlord letter, though, is not subject to that.
Right, I understand.
Right. Right.
You said that.
Right.
I appreciate it.
But for instance, for rent escrow, some of the municipal courts have their own forms, and in those instances, once those forms are up on our site, we'll have the right form for your county.
Oh, and you will be putting it up there
Yep.
and labeling which county it'll be for.
It's not labeled. The way that, so for instance, if folks will remember, at the beginning, I asked what county you're in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So we
So-
actually curate based upon that.
Okay.
So we consider it a completely curated experience.
And now explain what curate means. Hold
So
on.
curated means it's actually, so if you tell me you're in Montgomery County and you're in Dayton, so Montgomery has some interesting things. So the Dayton Municipal Court is different from the Montgomery County Municipal Court. They're in the same building, but we know that. So for instance, if you're in Montgomery County but not in Dayton, we're going to send you to the Montgomery County Municipal Court. If you tell me you live in Dayton, we're going to send you to the Dayton Municipal Court, and we're going to give you the Dayton Municipal Court form. Because actually, I think the forms are probably the same, but they are different courts, and they do sit with different, they have the same, I guess, just as lawyers, they have the same monetary jurisdiction, right? But they have different jurisdiction. So the system has been, I wouldn't say taught, because I would say it's AI, but we've actually set up the system so that it understands that if someone says they're in Montgomery County and they're in Dayton, we're going to send them to the Dayton Municipal Court.
Okay.
And Jeff, I think I said this to you earlier, one of the things that folks said to us was that the court system itself is incredibly confusing. So what we tried to do was to actually get folks to the right place by asking the fewest questions we can.
But the fact that it is, I don't know what the proper language is, that is the simple version of what you just said.
Yeah.
But it's somewhat self-taught. Once you feed the information in, then it figures out where you're from and which form then to send you relative to your court.
That's right. Because we've taught the program the rules.
Right.
Right. But unfortunately,
I said
it's,
self-taught. You taught it. And
Yeah,
now
right.
now it is.
but it can't,
working
but it
again.
can't do, so this is super technical, but it doesn't do what AI does, which is kind of teach itself.
Okay. So that's why you grimaced a little when I said it taught itself.
That's right.
Because it's not at
It's
that
not
level
AI.
of
That's right.
artificial intelligence.
That's correct. Yeah.
Folks. And
Yeah.
so it's not there yet.
That's
And,
right.
And the closer it gets to all of that, the less they'll need all of us. Right? Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Not yet.
No, you know, I think that
If I'm still doing this show in a few
that's right.
years, we'll revisit that question.
artificial intelligence requires so much data
Yeah.
that I don't think we're there yet. So I think we're okay.
Well, I could see a scenario where we get to a point where it's already drawing all this data in,
Mm-hmm.
so it's telling you right now what you're looking
Yeah.
for before you even know you need
Yeah.
it. But I mean, isn't that how some of these pop-ups on the computer when it comes to advertising work? You know, they're
Absolutely.
or when
Yep.
they're trying to correct a paragraph that I'm
Yep.
typing
And
and giving me words to complete the sentence.
yeah, there actually, there's some, when you talked about national, there's actually Legal Services Corporation work with Microsoft. So Legal Services Corporation is the national funder of civil legal aid throughout the country.
Mhm.
They actually work with Microsoft and they developed an AI engine, but they still need more data.
It's moving faster than I can keep up with, for sure. But I'm sure there are a lot of folks who are excited about what comes next. So.
Yeah, but we're excited obviously because we think we can help a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're obviously, I did the simplest one here, which is, essentially a landlord letter. But we have others, and we
Do you
will
want
be
to talk
getting.
about some of those? Can we do that without pop-up? Do you want to talk generally? Let's
Sure.
say you talked about how domestic relations matters
Right.
were kind of the source of your largest number of inquiries.
Yep.
You want to talk about a scenario involving something like that? I'll
Yeah.
let you approach it as
Sure.
you choose.
So for right now, we have a similar experience for if you need to get a divorce and you don't have children. When you have children, it's a very different picture in terms of the divorce. And so we are working on a similar experience, but the forms themselves get more complicated. But for right now, if you're trying to seek a divorce and you don't have children, we actually have that form in this experience where you can put in the data and then it basically takes that information and then writes it to a form. And with the domestic forms or the family law or the divorce forms, we actually are using, the Supreme Court did uniform domestic relations forms. And so those are the forms that every county in the state accepts. And so we went ahead and started to put what we're calling this experience for those uniform domestic relations forms. And so, but we have had requests, so for instance, custody is a big issue. We don't have that form yet. And so we're working on that, trying to get that information. But for instance, if you go to our website now, even for divorce with kids, if you give us some information, what we do is we actually bundle all the forms you need to fill out if you want to do that yourself. But it's not this where you put in like the fields and put in your name and then we put it in the right place. Right.
Okay. And it's a good time to repeat what I think you said earlier, that this is an ongoing process.
It is. Yep.
And you are supported by a lot of good folks who are
Absolutely.
volunteers as well as staff who are constantly updating the information, reviewing these changes in the law.
Yep.
So this will constantly be updated
Yep.
Relative to the propriety of the forms, the information contained in the
When
forms.
the law changes.
When the laws change, this type of thing.
That's right.
Now, that's no substitute, as you've also said, for
An attorney.
one-on-one
Yep.
Consultation with an attorney. You're not
Right.
giving legal advice.
We are
What
not.
you're doing is you're providing general information
Right.
that people can choose to use or not. They're
Yep.
not engaging the services of a lawyer
That is
in this regard.
Right.
People need to remember that. But there are lawyers and judges who are helping with this project and have been, who are going
the
to help
beginning.
guide you with understanding these processes. Let's say, we'd say from 100 feet, but ultimately your case is on the ground. And so
That's
you've
right.
got to get from 100 feet to the ground, and that's the question of whether you're going to ultimately use an attorney or do it yourself.
That's correct. What
Yeah.
we try to do is to give people enough information so that they can take the action that's right for them, right?
Okay.
Sometimes that's self-helping and they will decide to go ahead and do it on their own. But we give folks choices because Ohioans said they wanted choices. And so we easily connect folks to the Bar Association. We easily connect folks to legal aid. And we do it all on your phone and at the touch of a button, literally. But that's what we wanted to do, was to make a seamless experience. Now, I took folks actually from the homepage. Now, we launched August 27th. And right now, most of our folks are actually coming through that homepage. But over time, actually more and more folks through Google and through Bing and other search engines will actually land at what we're calling that page you saw, which was how to get your landlord to make repairs. And that's why you'll see titles like that, because that's the way people type things into Google. How to get my landlord to make repairs.
Okay.
Right.
And again, a good reminder, watch for the logo. Thank you. Watch for the logo for this website that we showed you earlier, and maybe we'll get an opportunity to show that logo again in a few minutes. So you know what we're talking about is the website where you need to be to receive this kind of assistance. There it is. Thanks, Eric. Look for that red dot with
That's
the map of the state of Ohio, the
That's right.
white outline, and the big star in the middle,
We call it our Ohio button.
or your Ohio button.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the history of this initiative. We've talked about what this initiative is intended to be about, what its mission is. We've talked about how to access it and how to use it.
Yep.
What other information might you like to share, and maybe even go into greater detail about something here that you've already talked about? We haven't had any callers yet tonight, so we have some time, and it's wide open for you to tell us what you'd like to tell us about relative to the site to
Sure.
help the people who are watching this evening.
Sure. So what I want to express is that the site is constantly being improved, expanded, and maintained. So for instance, I know that based upon a recent, we use certain tools that we can look at the site. I know that there's probably over 1,600 links on this site because of all the resources that we have. And right now I know we have 50 broken links that we're fixing, because that's to the level at which we try to make sure that this site works for whoever comes to it. So we use tools to make sure that the site is maintained. It's also that it's secure. We want people to understand that right now the way that the site is set up, once they fill out a form, I actually don't know, it's anonymous. So the data is encrypted while they're doing it, and right now, because of the way the site is set up, I don't have access to those forms, so people are doing this within the privacy, because as soon as someone is done with the form and they've emailed it, we wipe that data. Because we understand how important sometimes anonymity is, right? Now the future of the site, though, is going to look a little different. So we actually received a grant from the Legal Services Corporation to build something called a user hub that we're super excited about. And what that will do is, these are complicated forms. And right now, folks need to complete the forms in one session. So I want to make sure folks understand that. So if you start a form, you need to complete it in that session. We set the forms up so that it usually takes no more than 30 to 45 minutes to complete one set of forms, more or less. But at the same time, we know that people are busy. They want to be able to come back to a form. And so we're setting up a secure user hub where folks can actually save off their forms. I can't access that data, but at the same time, folks will have a secure location.
They can
and
park that data,
Yep,
that which they
absolutely.
put in,
That's right.
come back to it at a
And they'll
different
have
time.
to authenticate in via a username and password, and that's next on the horizon. We didn't do that for launch because when we surveyed Ohioans, there's been a lot of breaches of data. You can't really go to the news without hearing whether it's this company or that company that somehow your data is out there. And so we didn't want to be one of those companies. So we're really taking our time in making sure that the site is secure. I also want to talk a little bit about our partners who have been wonderful. Yeah.
Before you get to
Yeah.
that, let me ask you, I made a
Yeah.
couple notes here. So if there's a broken link, is there any type of notice to the user that that link, maybe they had seen it before, they've come back, it's no longer there, or some alert that we're working on this link that's no longer available to you, anything of that nature, or is there a replacement or something to alert people? They say, well, wait, I was here before and it said something else and now it's not there.
For most folks, it's going to be seamless the way that our links are done. So for instance, like if someone were to go to a broken link, but they're often to an outside resource that, at the time, it could have been yesterday. We put that link on, they now have changed that link to a different location on their site. So they'll probably get like a 404 error. Like people probably hate those, but it basically says something like this page no longer exists on the site. You actually go to that site, but then you get that error. But for folks on our site, once we update that link to where it was intended to be, for most folks it's seamless, because what we try to do is say, go to this website to get this information. And so for folks on our site, once we correct it, it'll be seamless.
Okay. So again, people have to understand that you wanted to get started, you wanted to start helping folks with this.
Yep.
It's not perfect, but you're going to, as you constantly update it and change it
Right.
and get input. You talked about the security and how important that is, and you're
Yep.
constantly being alerted to that.
Yep.
Are there alerts that might come up as you find that possibly that someone is trying to hack the site or something of that nature? Is there any provision for letting the user know that they have to go somewhere else to get this information because, or is that all internal? You're just dealing with any hacking, I'll call it, issues yourselves,
Right.
not really alerting the consumer to that.
Sure. So I'm not sure. Like, what do I approach it this way?
I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying, as I'm asking the question, I'm trying
Yeah.
to think of what happens when I'm doing a search and what kind of pop-ups I might get if it's, like you explained, if it's no longer in use, it'll say it's no longer in use.
Right.
Maybe eventually it'll refer you somewhere else.
Sure.
Okay. But is there a word, do not do this or do not do that? Have you had any cause for any problem
So
like that?
our site is encrypted and secure.
Okay.
So folks shouldn't get that error on our site. If you go sometimes to an unsecure site, so Google did this thing, that's why you'll notice that sometimes you go to a site and it says it's not secure. It's often because they're not using the proper encryption protocols. But our
Okay.
site is encrypted and secure. We also have a maintenance contract with our developer, and we do constant security patches as necessary for the platform. And then we use a state-of-the-art host for it so that we are making sure that even the information that right now I'm not even storing while it's in transmission is as secure as we can make it.
Okay.
Nothing's foolproof, but as secure as we can make it. Now, I will say we do tell folks, for instance, who may be victims of domestic violence, that on your history and trail, because, like, for instance, we have to get some cookies in order to be able to essentially store information during the session.
Will you explain what cookies are either now or when you
Sure.
are done with this?
Yeah. So cookies are like, they're bits of information,
Right.
right? And so, like, I get that you're in Dayton and Montgomery County so that I can remember that for that session, that's stored just for the session, and then it's wiped, right?
Mhm.
But for instance, if folks have ever looked and seen their history on their phones, there's still information on their phones that say, hey, you visited Ohio Legal Help on this date.
Right.
And so we actually tell victims of domestic violence that if someone else has access to their phone or to their computer, to make sure they take appropriate steps to wipe that. Because you can actually clear that history. And so we try to tell folks and warn folks about that kind of information. Because we
And
want to keep anyone who may be in fear safe. But for victims of domestic violence, if they identify themselves, we try to immediately tell them they can call 911 or they can go to their local domestic violence agency. And we always connect them with ODVN because we take the safety and security of victims very seriously.
I think that's very important for people to hear.
Yep.
And, again, I'm sure that there is an aspect to this that if people are questioning or feel that what you've said or what they're finding is not consistent with what you said,
Sure.
how do they report that?
They just actually, this was something that everyone said was really important. So they can just email us at info@ohiolegalhelp.org.
We want to repeat that?
Info, yep, info, so it's INFO, like you seeking information,
Right,
at ohiolegalhelp.org.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, is that a general site for people to connect to, just for questions about things that they may not find on the website?
Yep.
As well as problems that they're having?
Right, so we've not had any emails about problems on the site,
Okay,
but we have had emails about content that they're not finding. So I had an email about, for instance, while we cover a lot of information about debt, we actually don't have student loan information up there. So I actually responded to that, and that the info@ohiolegalhelp.org, that email and that email box is staff. So we review it every day.
so there may be some scenarios where someone may have a question, they go to info.
Well, it's actually an email address. So
Yes.
if you have a
Yes.
question, you
Mhm.
would put it in your
Right,
email.
Right, and they may get a specific response.
We always respond.
Okay,
So for folks, and we actually have an auto response, because what we found is that most folks, if they're not finding information, sometimes they're seeking an attorney, a pro bono attorney.
mhm,
And so we have information that folks can get right away that says, hey, if you're trying to contact legal aid, you can call, I think it's 1-866-LAW-OHIO, and that will connect you with your local legal aid, right? That's a 1-800 number, you put in your zip code, and it will direct you to the right legal aid intake number. And then we also list the Bar Association lawyer referrals, and it's a little old school, but it lists all the counties, and they have to choose. But we want to get an answer to someone, so if we get emails at midnight, but we're not staffing it at midnight. So,
Sure.
so if someone really wants that information, but then during regular business hours, and then sometimes at midnight if I'm up, I will respond. So for instance, we've had questions about student loans. We've had questions about criminal sealing. And one of the reasons that we have not put criminal sealing in the forms online is that the Supreme Court is actually looking at a uniform form. So as soon as the Supreme Court approves that form, we'll have that information online. And we told that to the individual. We said, you know what, the law changed. They actually made it more generous. And we want to be responsive to that. So actually now, these impediments to employment, the legislature actually made it a little bit more generous in terms of what you can seal. So we're waiting for that form. As soon as we have that form, we'll get it up online and we'll tell you.
okay.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about that, I'd
Yeah.
refer you, at the risk of sounding like I'm showing for this program, that we did a program last year on record sealing, expungements, CQEs, and I would recommend you take a look at that. You go to datv.org, and you will, at that point, go to the list of shows, and you shouldn't have any problem finding that. The guest that night was Sasha Naiman from the Ohio Policy and Justice Center. That's where she was at that time, and she's very well known, I think, across the state for her work in that
Yep.
area. And she talked about this and changes that have gone on since the legislature first began to address some of these issues and how they're ongoing. So that's important, and might be of some additional assistance right now. So you wanted to talk, we have about 7 minutes or so left. We've not had any callers. So that doesn't mean nobody's watching,
Okay.
because when I take a look at after the show's over in a few days, and the online, it's interesting to see
Sure.
sometimes the comments, a number of people have viewed it, and
Sure.
that type of thing. But what else could we talk about that would help inform our viewers tonight about
Sure.
Ohio Legal Help?
So I know that when we ask consumers, one, is this site helpful? Like, would something like this be of help to you? And 70% of survey respondents said yes. They strongly agreed that a website would be helpful. So we wanted to make sure, right? We didn't want to just put we didn't want to create a new nonprofit just to create it, right? We wanted to make sure that it would be used and that it would be useful. And so when we did that, 70% of folks said, close to 70% said, yeah, this would be helpful to me and to my family. The other thing that I want to talk a little bit about is we had some amazing partners in this. So the Supreme Court of Ohio, the Ohio Judicial Conference, which is basically all the judges in Ohio. We had really wonderful agencies like Ohio Domestic Violence Network, all the clerks, the libraries again, who are wonderful in terms of working with us and thinking with us about what would actually help the folks that come and seek their help. And so, I want to make sure that we mention them. I also want to mention the Ohio Access to Justice Foundation. They're formerly known as OLAF, not the Snowman, but the Ohio Legal Assistance Foundation.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And the Justice Foundation is actually where Ohio Legal Help was incubated. So, and then I also want to make sure I mention the Ohio State Bar Foundation. They're one of our supporters as well in terms of our funding, along with the Supreme Court of Ohio.
And you also had input along the way, and probably still from the Alliance of Legal Aid Societies.
Yep, absolutely. They were a critical partner. We work with them daily in terms of, they understand low-income clients than anyone better than anyone in the state. And they understand what their clients want and need. And also, they can tell us, this is something we can't provide right now because we just don't have the money to do it. Their attorneys, probably a couple hundred attorneys throughout the state, but they're trying to help 2 million people.
Oh, I understand. And, we talked about this a little. I don't want to go into the weeds on this because that's a whole nother lengthy conversation. But if you want to see what the local Legal Aid Society, more particularly known as Legal Aid of Western Ohio / Advocates for Basic Legal Equality, what they do, and they also have information online. And that information, I think, can complement what you've heard this evening, and both can complement one another, Ohio Legal Help as well as what I just mentioned. And maybe you can find something locally that will answer your question. If you can't find it on Legal Help, Ohio Legal Help, and vice versa. So I think the idea that folks are working together, to me, and collaborating on this is just wonderful. And I think, on behalf of a lot of folks, I thank you for doing this. It's so important, and I think it really is an effort to help people who can't always help themselves and can't get the advice they need, but maybe with your help can help themselves. And even if it's to help get them to an attorney that they might need if they have no idea how to go about that.
Right.
I think that's all very important. Now, we've got just a couple minutes left. Is there anything else you want to comment upon?
Well, so I have to say, obviously, the website name again, which is ohiolegalhelp.org. But I have to say this for my communications manager, that who really has been wonderful. I have a communications team that isn't even mine. They help me though. And so if you follow us on Facebook and then on Twitter and LinkedIn as well, that'd be wonderful. Because what that does is that helps raise our it's kind of like a ripple effect, right? More and more people know.
Right.
And so we've had some really good luck with social media in terms of driving some traffic to the site. Right now, we just want people to discover it. We want people to get to the site because we've actually been told by folks, it's not always for me. It's actually for maybe someone I go to church with or somebody that I'm helping with on something else. And it's not always legal. Sometimes it's, like for instance, we have information on how to access food pantries. We want to make sure that we get folks connected to the right resource for them in their county and locality.
Well, and you shouldn't be shy about that last part because I think that's all very important, and it reflects the changing way people get their information, who's looking for that information, and those of us like me who've been around a while, we've had to learn that people get their information in new and different ways
Yep.
than they did before. And so it's very important that you provide that
Mhm.
type of access.
Yep.
Well, folks, I think we're winding down the last minute of the program. I want to again thank Susan Che, the Executive Director of Ohio Legal Help, for coming this evening, being our guest, telling you what Ohio Legal Help is, what its mission is, how it came about, how you can access it, and how it may help you in many ways with different problems that you have that are law-related. I thank you very much for tuning in this evening. Again, datv.org is where you want to go to view this show on our YouTube connection. After tonight, it may be a day or two before it's up and available. Specifically, we have a lot of shows that are still there over the years, and particularly the shows of the last year. I thank you for tuning in. I hope some of you live stream this program tonight. And if you're not sure where the show broadcasts, please again go to datv.org, and you'll see what stations pick this up. The Miami Valley Communications Council picks this up on a schedule that they have. They do not show this live in the southern suburbs of Dayton, but if you go take a look at their programming, you'll be able to find out when it might be available. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next month. I believe it's November 4th, 2019. Good night.